The Winnipeg Jets have finally vanquished their demons and put down the mighty San Jose Sharks. What was it the best game? No. Was it one in which the Jets needed to show that they can also beat some of the teams that are well below them in the standings and giving them trouble? Absolutely. We'll dive into all of this and more on tonight's episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets.
You're Locked On the Hockey Jets, your daily podcast on the Winnipeg Jets. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greeting, Jets fans, and welcome to this episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Harrison Lee, an avid Winnipeg Jets fan and an online blogger. You can follow me on Twitter at HLivingLoco and at LO_Winnipeg Jets. As always, thanks for making Locked On Jets your first listen of the day every day. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe on all of your favorite podcasting platforms, including YouTube. Of course, we've got all of the usual stuff out there, Spotify, Megaphone, you name it, we're out there. Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe, but of course, it'll help you never miss another episode, and most of all, we just love and appreciate your support. You know, your listens mean the world to me. Tonight's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Now, like I said at the top of the episode, the Jets are, they're currently underway against the Anaheim Ducks, and we'll talk a little bit about that game in just a little bit. But before the Jets even had a chance to take on the Ducks, they had to vanquish one of their old nemesis this season. And of course, this team somehow has managed to cause the Jets absolute fits, despite not actually outplaying the Jets in most of their games. In fact, you'd argue the Jets really deserved the first game, even though Winnipeg lost by a narrow margin, and yet somehow Winnipeg just fell a little bit short. I am, of course, talking about the very mighty, very strong San Jose Sharks. Now, I know we're all laughing a little bit, but, you know, it is kind of weird that, weird and also a little bit funny that the Sharks in their last 10 games have one win. And of course, it just happened to be against the Jets. It would also happen to be Winnipeg's only regulation loss in their last 10 games. So very interesting that the Jets were unfortunately victimized by the Sharks, and also a little bit of puck luck and some, I guess, magical saves. Let's be real, right? The Sharks actually got massively outplayed in the first game, and you probably expected the same thing in the second game. And for the most part, you did see that. I will say that towards certain parts of the game, the Jets let San Jose get back in a little bit more than I would like. San Jose did open the scoring first, but the Jets had some really good fight back and ended up coming to tie it and then win on a Morgan Barron, or not a Morgan Barron. Barron actually tied it from like it was like some sort of weird crease scramble, and it just seemed like the goaltender lost the puck. And then later in the game, you know, the power play came back. There weren't really that many penalties called, so like the power play opportunities were pretty far and few between, which, you know, kind of makes it hard to really get an assessment of how the first unit is doing. But for this unit, holy cow, you know, we've been begging for them to really skate and have good off the puck movement, to create space and to attack effectively. And this this power play unit, this I guess quintuplet, if you want to say it that way, finally connected on a beautiful sequence that kind of started from some chaotic rebounds and stuff, and then Ehlers kind of did the rest. He created some great curls, had some great perimeter play, and then did his special where he hit a great diagonal high-to-low pass to Gabriel Vilardi, who was just sitting there basically on the back door. Now, I will say that, you know, Dubois, we always asked him to be like a net front presence, but he wasn't really as menacing down low as you would like. With Vilardi, I would say that I've really been kind of seeing him do this thing on the back door where he's constantly evading defenders and seemingly getting lost in the mix. I don't know how a guy his size, who is as big and as skilled as he is, continues to get unmarked in those areas behind the goalie and behind defenders, but like there's almost no one on this team who's better at back post ghosting than Vilardi is. He's amazing at it, and it just seems like he has a sixth sense for how to get into that space and then capitalize on it. He almost never misses. He's a backdoor merchant, but in the best way possible. We love those kinds of goals because if you have a great passing sequence, a great high to low play, something that's an extremely high danger cross slot pass, it deserves a goal. And Vilardi has been excellent at pounding those into the net. So a fantastic goal, a big 2-1 victory. Was it the most, attractive win? No. The Jets were at times not that great, but you know what? Who cares, right? At the end of the day, the Jets still owned the expected goals for this game. They still own the edge in the shot clock. If I recall correctly, Hellebuyck had a monster game again. Had to deal with more deflections than high danger stuff necessarily. San Jose did get a couple of down low looks in the slot, but for the most part, I thought it was more that there were a lot of screens and the Sharks trying to pick off with scrappy little goals and stuff like that. Stuff that's maybe not the most dangerous at first glance, but, bouncing pucks, a couple of dirty rebounds, maybe a wall bounce that sort of careens off of the backboards into a really dangerous area. Hellebuyck really didn't seem bothered by any of it. And with that game, he moved up to a .920 save percentage and again remains really the king of the NHL. Not only is he the best goalie in the NHL, in my opinion, he's also on one of the best defensive teams. So now you have this amazing duo of defensive structure and goaltending. It's really nice when both of those align. And I know people will say, well, he's, a great goalie on a strong team with a strong defensive unit. And that is true, but that Jets defense also can be porous in a couple of very specific areas. So, all told, he's definitely pulling his own weight, and he's been a monster this year, perhaps better than he's ever been, which, considering how good we're talking about a Vezina winner here, that is really saying something. So big victory. Nice to see the Jets get 2 points, and it was hopefully a prelude to what would follow in the next game against the Anaheim Ducks, which is currently underway. We're in the first intermission, and I'll give you a full report tomorrow or Sunday on what exactly happens in the rest of this game and kind of give you some thoughts. But in just a little bit, we'll at least give you a bit of a teaser, a bit of a preview, and talk about what's gone right in the first period and what perhaps is maybe not so ideal. We'll get to all of that in just a moment, but before we go any further, I did want to shout out our friends and partners at FanDuel. The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's, win or lose for those of you who might be Vikings fans. You know that it's perhaps not ideal. It's been a bit of a rough season, but you know what? $5 on any sort of bet, you get 150 back guaranteed. What's not to like? Like I said, 150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's just super easy money. And, with an app that's super easy to use, there are so many ways to, actually use all of those extra bets on stuff like live same game parlays, bets under their new Explorer tab. They even have a parlay hub so that you can find the most popular parlays and make your money off of that. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Hello, friends, and welcome back to this episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Everydayers, thank you so much for rejoining us on tonight's episode as we are diving into the first period of Winnipeg versus Anaheim. Bit of a fun game, I guess, if you're a Ducks fan, at least to start. For Winnipeg, perhaps not the most ideal first 20 minutes. We'll talk about why in just a moment, but before we go any further, just wanted to let you know about a really cool thing the Locked On Sports Network is doing. We have launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top stories of the day with our local experts and our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Now, like I said, the Jets are currently playing the Ducks, and it's not been great, I'll be honest. After a really strong start in which the Jets outshot the Ducks 8-2 or whatever, Anaheim started clawing back into this game, and Winnipeg had a bit of a defensive breakdown where Pionk maybe got a little too aggressive at his own blue line and in the neutral zone, got caught in a pinch, and unfortunately Mason McTavish kind of used a screen from, I think, Radko Gudas in front of Brossoit and backhanded home a goal, which is kind of annoying because the Jets were outplaying the Ducks at large stretches, had a couple of very near misses, but of course, with the Jets, it kind of feels like, those near misses, they can kind of go wide of the post, and, those rebounds, the Jets recently haven't been able to capitalize on as much. Again, I mean, it is what it is, right? It's just sort of the nature of the bounces, nature of the game. And the Jets, they still are good enough to kind of come back in this game. So, like, I'm not particularly worried. I will say that, Bones' last game ended up reuniting the top line again, Scheifele, Vilardi, and Ehlers. And, that game, they kind of looked okay. Scheifele didn't look 100% to me. Tonight, they look pretty refreshed. I thought they were pretty dangerous, had a couple of good scoring opportunities. Morrissey is continuing to do Morrissey things. I got to say, for me, Josh has really taken a step forward overall in his assertiveness. I know he had like 76 points last year, so this is going to sound really funny, but I just feel like when it comes to his like puck control and skill and possession this year, he's even more dominant. I mean, the dude is just dynamite with the puck. And we saw it quite often in this period where his confidence in being an aggressive attacking blue liner has really paid dividends. Now, it hasn't led to points yet. He's come close, just barely missing on a few chances, but I suspect that at some point, the floodgates will probably open for him. Not like he's not scoring enough. He's got plenty of points this year, so no concern there. But you just feel like when he misses wide of the post or something, that it somehow pains him personally. But yeah, this first period, not ideal. I will say that I really do love how good the fourth line has been for the Jets. I think that has been a continued bright spot throughout all of these games. Toninato, AJF, and Barron have all been working a treat together. There are times where AJF makes himself look like Gretzky. It is the wildest thing because, I've actually seen Janssen Fjallby before, back when he was in Hershey and Washington, and I can tell you he was never like this. There's a confidence to his game, and it's nice because he's a very straightforward player, very direct. There's not like a ton of crazy flash or high-end elite skill, and yet he works every shift very hard. He's got that Brandon Tanev nose for the net, dives into the corners, and he's got the speed to actually make something happen. So, yeah, it's nice to see him getting rewarded. And Toninato, again, with a couple of really great passes. I don't know where this version of Toninato has been hiding, but he's been awesome since rejoining the team. As long as he keeps this up, I really don't see any reason why he or AJF should sit. And, of course, Barron's a lock for this team. He's been great. I think he's, had his 10th goal or 9th or 10th goal already. What a strong season for Morgan. Awesome for him. Glad to see him really thriving. And, perhaps at some point it would be worth maybe elevating his minutes, because I feel like Iafallo has kind of struggled in the top 9. Maybe it's time to swap them and see if, Barron perhaps could even bring a little bit more offensive jump. I'd still prefer to upgrade Nino Niederreiter up to the top 6 in lieu of, no Kyle Connor, but it is what it is. I'm sure the coaching staff will do what the coaching staff does. Now, I will say in this Ducks game, there is one thing that I don't like what the staff is doing, and that is the amount of time that Perfetti has played. There are moments where he doesn't get a shift for several minutes, and you just can't have that happen. I know that the Lowry line and the top line tend to eat a lot of the minutes, but you've got to give Cole more to do, because, he is the future and present for this team. He's one of our most dangerous attackers, and, when you're in a game like this where you're either trailing or tied, you got to let Perfetti be one of your most creative kids, because, when the puck is on his stick, he's just a difference maker for this team, and somebody who, quite honestly, has the ability and skill to dice and carve up almost any defensive unit out there. He really is elite. We've seen him have a very strong season this year. You got to feed him, Bones. Let's not mess around. Give him more ice time, and I think you will tend to see some really good things come out of it. Every time he steps on the ice, good stuff generally follows. So feed him more. Let's hope for a win. Only one goal down against the Ducks. Jets have plenty of time to come back in this. We'll hopefully sometime this weekend have a report on what should be a Jets victory. But obviously, there's one other thing that I think is worth talking about. I know a lot of you are probably not super thrilled with how the World Juniors ended, but if you're a Jets fan, it actually was okay in some respects. I know a lot of you are probably pissed about Team Canada, but hey, at least some Jets prospects got to have a good time and come away with some hardware. We'll talk about one player in particular and what he brought to Team USA in just a little bit. Before we go any further, though, I do want to shout out our friends and partners at Sleeper. It's almost the halfway point of the season for the Jets, and obviously, this has been a very interesting year in terms of highs. You know what? Winnipeg feels like it's back and better than ever, perhaps better or at least on par with the 2017-2018 team. Now, we all know it's not quite on par, but, this Jets team, all the same, great vibes. Lows, perhaps special teams, maybe not the best this year, but you know what? It's okay. Regardless of where the Jets are in the standings, I want to remind you that you could win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports and especially daily fantasy hockey. Because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. For those of you who love stats, this is the best chance to make use of it. You've got all that knowledge up here. Well, put it to use and help yourself make some quick cash. If you beat Sleeper's daily projections, whether it's more or less, in tons of stats categories for stuff like goals, saves, assists, and so much more, and you know the top stars and how they're doing, whether it's Hellebuyck, McKinnon, McDavid, Draisaitl, Ehlers, no matter who you're tracking, they've got all the players ready for you. And if you get 8 of these stats projections correct, guess what? You can win 100 times your bet with Sleeper. That's right, 8 stats categories, guessed correct, 100 times your bet. So start paying attention and nail your picks so you can win big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll go up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. Hello, friends, and welcome back to this episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Everydayers, thank you so much for rejoining us on tonight's episode as we are just closing out really quickly with some final thoughts on the World Juniors. And, the Jets have a couple of guys who come away with some hardware for Team Sweden. Elias Salomonsson and Fabian Wagner come away with silver. Really good tournament for Team Sweden, although I think losing to Team USA at home probably hurts like you would not believe. There were plenty of fisticuffs, some late game scrums, and, obviously for Team Sweden, a very bitter taste losing in Gothenburg. It's just a heartbreak for what has been a very strong season or strong program from them. A great performance at the tournament and tons of top players, really showing off and having a great time. So, for Team Sweden, I'm sure this is a bit of a bitter pill, but you know what? It is what it is, at least for the Jets, right? Salomonsson has continued to show why at some point he looks like a guy who's going to be a really strong 2-way D, maybe one of Winnipeg's better top-end 2-way D. We don't have many prospects like Elias in the system. Our large adult son is great defensively, but he's also no slouch in the puck-moving ability. He's got sharp offensive instincts, and he just seemingly grows by leaps and bounds as the days go on, and he continues to get pro ice time. So I'm really excited for him. He, for me, is one of my most heralded prospects. I think he's one of the most underrated ones for the Jets, and I'm hoping that at some point he becomes DeMello's successor and heir apparent to the Morrissey pairing. Fabian Wagner, didn't really get a chance to scout him much. Obviously, he's had some really fun tournaments in other leagues and stuff before, so, one to watch perhaps for Winnipeg's middle six. But I think the guy that everyone is really talking about right now and who has really stolen the hearts of a lot of Jets fans plays for the other guys, Team USA. Rutger McGroarty, we already knew coming into this tournament was going to be a major player. He was named team captain, and, now he's got gold, right? And for McGroarty, after having a big college season already, Rutger, it feels like he's on the precipice of like local superstardom for the Jets, but really his infectious personality, that mile-wide smile that he's got, just feels like it's going to be a hit with fans from other teams, but he's also not afraid to throw his weight around. He threw a massive, clean, open ice check, one that you would probably say you've seen from some other players like, say, Bufflin. Maybe not as devastating, but a very strong physical check, a clean hit, although it was closer to the edge than perhaps we want to admit. Still, Rutger plays a very hard-nosed game. He's not afraid of the corners. But I think what always stood out in this tournament, and just from other footage that I've seen of him, is how smart he is. He knows that his teammates have, the elite scoring ability, passing ability, and vision to make stuff happen. So he has played an elite complementary role, kind of chipping in, some good passes, grinding in the corners, and creating space for his teammates to do their thing. What I really appreciate about him, and what I've kind of felt with him, having seen, the improvements in the skating and stuff, and the way that he plays, it reminds me of like taking some of Scheifele's elite offensive instincts and marrying it to like a Boone Jenner style player, which sounds like a bit of a, I don't know, insult, but I promise you it's not. If you made Scheifele kind of like a Crosby-ish sort of grinder in the corners, right? Somebody who's not afraid to go down low and use their physicality to their advantage, I feel like Rutger is going to be one of those kinds of guys. I don't quite know what his scoring ceiling is going to be. That part, I think, is still a bit of a work in progress, but already we're seeing big returns from him. You know, if he makes the Jets at some point in the next year or two, I'm really excited. I really feel like his role as a potential boost to the second line and very clearly, you know, a future captain for this team. It's almost a can't miss prospect. He seems like the world is basically at his feet, and now he's got a gold medal to really boost that confidence so that when he perhaps does get his pro trial at the end of this college season, maybe he actually sticks. I really have a lot of hope for him. He's probably Winnipeg's top overall prospect, and I know that's saying a lot because we've got some really good ones. Salamonson, Heinola, who's kind of not really a prospect, but still sort of is. And, of course, big Brad Lambert. Gosh, whew. I don't know why that was a tongue twister, but we've also got Kobe Barlow, right? I know Barlow is just coming back from injury recently, so he's perhaps a little bit less on the up and up, and Lucius still recovering and really trying to get back up to speed after missing so much time over the past couple of years. Has had a good start to the season, but, I think at the end of the day, right, top prospect, right? Who is the guy who's going to be your magnetic force? It really does feel like all roads lead to Rutgers. So let's hope McGroarty takes this whole tournament and really runs with it. I mean, he's had such a strong showing, and I know that perhaps his counting stats weren't crazy for this tournament, but his leadership, his personality, and what I expect to eventually become a really pivotal part of his leadership for the Jets locker room, I feel like is unmissable. If nothing else, he's got the best vibes and personality of any Jets prospect I've seen in a very long time. And we've had some really fun kids. Dylan Sandberg, when he was first drafted, wide-eyed, starry-eyed, had, a very innocent appeal and seemingly was just a good kid. And Rutger kind of takes that and cranks it to 11 with a beaming smile, a wonderful personality. I can't wait for him to make the Jets and hopefully become a Jets superstar in the future. But if you watch this tournament, let me know what you thought of our Jets prospects. Who are you most excited by? Do you think Rutger could potentially become elite? Drop your comments below in the comment section, or at my social medias at HLivingLoco and at LO_Winnipeg Jets on Twitter. For tonight's episode, though, that is going to be all the time that we have. I thank you so much for making Locked On Jets your first listen of the day, every day. We'll see you back later this weekend for some thoughts on how the Jets do against the Ducks. Let's hope it is a victory. As always, have a great night. See you later, and go Jets, go.